And thanks everyone for joining. Myself, Andre Maletti, and Travis, who I'm going to have introduce himself here in a second. This is not a webinar. We don't have any slides, so you get to look at our ugly mugs for the next 30 to 45 minutes, and no selling software. That's the deal. We're going to have a conversation. I'm just kidding. We can pitch some software at any point. Travis, feel free to go at
Nah,
it.
it's more fun not to.
All right, good. Well, I know you. I've known you for 6, 7 years. Our paths have crossed here and there quite a bit. But
Mhm.
you've been in the industry for what, 20, 30, 40 years? You're like 70 years old. Like you've been
Yeah.
in staffing for quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about your journey in staffing and recruiting.
Well, I hope I'm in the same shape at 70 that I am at like nearly 45. But yeah, I started in '07 with a ATS called Sendouts. So know the Bullhorn universe very well. We were competitors back in the day. Obviously, that company was acquired and worked with the Bullhorn team after that. And then in 2014, Jason, Kevin, and myself started a company called Herefish, which is you might know now as Bullhorn Automation. And yeah, we watched that whole world rise and go crazy. So here we are, fast forward to 2024, and we're on to our next thing, Kevin and I with Boosty, and then also just how the world is looking at talent marketing and job marketing is kind of shifting and changing. Um, and so it's kind of a fun time to be alive, especially in an era with AI where a lot of this stuff used to be super difficult and code intense. Now it's a little bit more prompt engineering, and so we've seen all these things change in the past few years, and it's been pretty wild.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely want to hear how AI has accelerated your ability to get to market,
Mhm.
as well as just the efficacy of your solutions in the digital
Sure.
marketing space. But so this conversation, the idea for this webinar came about. I think it was Bullhorn Engage earlier this
Mhm.
year. I had lunch with your CRO, Chris Dews, who's a
Mhm.
Bullhorn alumni, and mid bite of my cheeseburger, he's like,
Yeah.
the industry is still spending $36 billion a year on job boards. And like,
Yep.
I was shocked at that number. And then he sent me an article, I think that you maybe collectively wrote. It was more of
Mhm.
a mission statement on
Yep.
like how the industry needs to change. And that I started digging into it. And then we had a quick chat, and I was like, man, we need to talk about this because that is a lot of
Sure.
money. And I
Yep.
think as we get into it, like that money is not as fruitful as it used to be, and it's slowly diminishing in terms of its return. So
Mhm.
I think that's kind of at Boosty, I think your whole idea was like, let's go after some of that money and let's make this a little more effective and efficient for agencies.
Yeah, I mean, I come from like a B2B SaaS like mindset and point of view, and if I so again, since I've been in the space, '07, people have loved job boards and they've also equally hated job boards. So it's like I don't think that job boards like the big baddie that everybody wants to think they are, but I don't think it should be a single source marketing solution, and that's kind of what it's been for my kind of timeline here. And I think there's no diversification, and we're going into a world where kind of the biggest job board player is almost competitive against staffing, and kind of laid out those plans that they're going to be very competitive. And I think that kind of leaves a lot of people kind of scratching their heads, like, okay, where do we go next? And I really think it goes back to kind of first principles on how you build a brand and how you build a marketing engine, kind of multi-channel and using all the right tools. And I think automation is a big lift there. I mean, Herefish or Bullhorn Automation, like that's a big one to kind of leverage. But you look at the total spend of, like, again, I think it's down 30 to 34 billion this
Yeah, it's
past
gone
this
down
past
five
year.
percent. Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, sure, it's still insane. However,
But
that only represents like,
it's still like
yeah,
97% of
yeah,
digital spend though. It's like there's
yeah,
no strategy into the money.
no,
It's just the traditional, it's the Sunday newspaper advertisement, right?
we got to do it because we've always done it, and I think that's
Always
the
done it.
mentality. We kind of we hear that. We also hear we know we have a problem, but we need to change. And so the most the parallel that I always give, it's like this is a drug. Like people have lived off this for a very long time, and it's really hard to kick it. And thinking about doing other things like internal database marketing or doing some kind of paid different digital channels is just kind of scary. And I think that if I were a staffing firm owner, I would be definitely looking into those things. And some have. I mean, some have like
Yeah.
gone all the
Yeah,
way
for
in. Like
sure.
I can say 2014 we launched Cheerfish. We didn't talk to marketers necessarily inside of the companies we were pitching. Fast forward to like today, we talk to like there's people coming from out of the industry. They're coming from software companies wherever, and they're helping these staffing firms kind of like level up on their marketing side. And it's way cool, very neat to see. And I think that's just going to it's going to need to progress and keep going that direction, especially with a competitive threat of kind of job boards trying to eat the staffing firm's lunch. And I don't think that's the right move for the job board. I think there's going to be some quick money made there, but ultimately it comes down to these are people businesses, and you deal with people, and the companies that are good at staffing are really good at staffing. And I think that they're starting to realize they have to kind of get off this single source channel and start to diversify how they get candidates, how they get clients, and the experiences they provide for
Yeah.
both of those entities. So
Yeah, and so they're coming after staffing's lunch. I mean, if we look at the last 10 years, the staffing industry has grown about 30%. However, the job board industry has advertising revenue has gone up 151% in the
yeah.
last 10 years, right? So
Yeah.
you've got it's kind of, you're right, it's a drug, but it's not a gateway drug leading to better things. It's just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
one of those things. And I mean, even to the point where in talking to some CMOs and some agencies, like it's not even part of the marketing budget. They allocate it as like recruiting ops. So it's just
yeah.
like a line item that's just like, hey,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of these things that we're gonna always do and allocate spend.
Yep.
But a lot of it has been going down, right? And I
Mhm.
think the industry has definitely bought into this idea of you have an earned database, let's go
Yep.
mine
Yep.
active and passive opportunities there. And that's going to become a core competency, and a lot of agencies have like run that play, right? Like
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
take
Yep.
spend, let's reduce spend in job board, and let's start doing better sourcing and matching within our database. And whether that's scoring or re-engagement campaigns, like it is leading to it.
Yeah, yeah.
But what's crazy about, the top of the funnel, and I've never really been a top of the funnel guy. I mean, I have in other
Yeah.
in other careers, but not in
Sure.
staffing. I've always been a
Mhm.
middle to end of the funnel, like drive conversion. But like the funnel in the staffing with such a massive amount of money spending on job boards, I mean, it's like 92% of applicants come from job boards,
Mhm.
but it only makes up like what 30% of hires. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
very, very inefficient given
Sure.
the amount of money that's being spent there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we kind of look at this, just again, like Boosty, our new thing is we kind of attack that talent marketing funnel. So everything from like awareness down to the application. And we started looking at this as like all this money gets spent at the very bottom. You're spending for the most active candidates on job boards to an active job you have, which is great. Like you should definitely keep some portion of your spend for active candidates at that. They're looking for a job. You need to fill the role, and definitely keep that around as a channel. But nobody spends time up here where that's where you start to build brand awareness and goodwill, and then people kind of move in, and then you have mechanisms on your websites to capture those people and then move them into your funnel. It's a very like classic ecom kind of mirrored play here where I might be we've all bought stuff off Instagram, I'm sure, or bought stuff online, and you get targeted based on your behavior and your occupation and your affinities. And then they drive you through, right? And might not buy the first time. You go and you sign up for the 10% off coupon, and then you come back, and then you're like, okay, I'm finally ready to buy. Why do we think candidates are any different? Like we kind of treat them as they're not consumers, but they are, just like we all are as owners of software companies and owners of staffing companies. Um, so I really think that that is starting to become more obvious to folks. And again, mirroring the path of e-com and how that kind of drives people to action is something
Yeah.
that, again, that's our bet at Boosty, is that we bet that that's going to be the way, you know, companies do this in the future, on the corporate side and on the staffing firm side. So for
Yeah.
us, it's super interesting. And again, I think there's always going to be some allocation of your spend that goes to job boards, but I don't think it should be
Right.
100% like it is today. Like I
Sure.
just don't see that being reasonable going forward.
No, definitely not. And there's two things I want to talk about, like the change in consumer dynamics and this idea of like active versus passive candidates.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
first, like, millennials, Gen X, like maybe like older older millennials started search at the job boards, but the majority of job search and applying out doesn't
Mhm.
leave search engines. It
Yeah,
stays
yeah,
in
totally.
Google and it gets engaged through like other digital entities like
Yep,
referrals or word of mouth. And so like that's a big thing. Like usually money follows the eyeballs, and I just don't think the eyeballs are going there anymore,
yeah,
especially for the growing demographics of our workforce.
for sure.
I mean, yeah, please comment on that because that's where my head like immediately goes.
Yeah, I think, just anecdotally, we talked to a bunch of companies that have, say they have 500 to 1,000 jobs. They get, 300 applicants. Most of those come from a job board. They don't know how to filter and rank those. They kick those out. So it's like, again, talking about the efficacy, I think there's parts there, but like, let's get the 30 that are good, not the 300 that are bad, or the 270 that are bad. And I think when you look at kind of the changing workforce as far as channels and how they search and what they do, it's no different than how we buy shoes. Like we go to Google and they search, and we see it with our products. We boost to Google paid search for a job in a location, and we see those numbers improve once we add on display on top. So people are see the billboard that's targeted based on occupation or their behaviors, and then they don't take an action on the display ad, but then they go to Google and do immediate search for that company in
Right.
the location that we targeted them in. So it's like it all works, and it all works together. And I think just the way people, again, how we buy has changed. So, and how we
Yeah.
search for a job hasn't. And I think that's part of the reason. Again, you have the most active candidates, and um, again, they're just they're pounding through 5 to 6 applications a day, and they go straight through the job boards. And on the flip side of that, you have companies and staffing firms complaining about the candidate quality, and it's like, well, the same person that you probably
It's
have in your
the
database already. You're not targeting somebody new. You're not targeting somebody based that's
No.
not necessarily looking. Again, it just goes back to the active passive point you brought up to start the thread. So
And there's a stigma that talent that are coming from the job boards are typically
yeah.
not qualified, right? It's just a spray and pray
Mhm.
strategy, and so you're going to see that in terms of your drop off and your conversion.
Yeah,
And like everyone's a passive candidate right now. Like
everybody.
that's the other thing. So like you need to stop thinking about who you're targeting for jobs just based on the fact that somebody applies, right? Like
Mhm.
by following the chain of custody or following where they've looked or what they've clicked on, you're able to drive an engagement that can potentially
Mhm.
become a lead for you. I think I was
Yeah.
talking to Brian Vesey
Mhm.
from Ref Assured the other day, and they do reference checking, and so the references, when they go to refer a candidate, they ask them the question, "Hey, are you potentially interested in a job at some point?"
Yeah.
And
Yep.
20% of them opt in. Like
Yes.
it's totally
Yes.
like they're not even applying to jobs, but they're raising their hand saying like
Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested in something that's better, and define better however way you want. But
Sure.
it's that passive engagement. And I think content does that to us a lot, right? I'm not in the
Mhm.
market for a, I don't know, a new tornado resistant cigar lighter
Sure,
for
yeah, lighter, right, right.
but 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 it pops up in Instagram in my feed because I'm
Mhm.
just sucking in golf content 24/7, and then boom, there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm checking out the different colors.
yeah, absolutely. I think that it's just wild how again, it's wild how they know enough about us. Again, they know that we like these things or we check out, this content, and then it sets in the next room of what we're actually looking at. It's like, oh, that actually is related. Like a tornado resistant lighter is very relevant to somebody that spends some time on the golf course. So it's they know all of this stuff. And again, it goes back to occupational affinity targeting and being able to get in front of a person and
Yeah.
um,
But
drive
you
that
need
there. And
content, right? You
yeah.
need like a sphere of content in order
Mhm.
to place relevant. Like you can't just throw job ads anywhere. There, I mean,
No.
you can, but you're not going to get the type of, click through and
Yeah.
CPM that would make it an effective spend. Like it needs to be associated. Is
Correct.
there enough
Yeah. It's
content like out there right now that like complementary advertising would warrant in terms of like the job industry?
there's some social influence stuff that kind of is out there. I think like TikTok, there's some job influencers that like try to like, put a lens on certain roles that are hot and big. I think there's one that's like a nurse that she's like talking about all the different travel options that exist and like what you should look for when you're looking for your next travel role. And there is enough out there, or starting to become enough out there. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
you know, I think it'll get there. We're just in this era of like constant change and like really fast change. So things happen overnight. It's like, oh wow, now this is a whole new channel that we can dig into.
Yeah.
Currently we do display and search, but social is like on the scene. And then it's like, which social network do you go to? Because what was popular when we were 32 is not as popular today.
Right.
So how do you kind of stay and hitch a wagon to one of those? Um, so it's kind of wild. But I think I want to go back to your point of like the passive talent kind of percentage. Like there's diverging research about what that number is, but it's 70+% of people are always open to a role. It's just,
Yeah.
do they know that your role exists and how do you get in front of them in a scalable, effective way? And I think that's always been the challenge. You can only call so many people, you can only try to source so many people off of known sources. And so I think that's where, again, I think the world's shifting. There's data has made it, easier than ever to make those kind of target assumptions. So yeah, it's we're in this weird era, and it's all going to change. But how it looks in 10 years is yet to be known.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think about, going back to this idea of like what the digital journey looks like for somebody that's like, let's like the easy one's travel nursing, right? Because
Mhm. Yep.
there's like it's a lifestyle, right? So you're gonna have a ton of
Mhm.
lifestyle content, but like somebody like in, let's say like light industrial, nobody's
Mhm.
like in the light industrial industry and it's
Yeah.
like part of their lifestyle, right? Like you need to figure out, do you tie into like a gig? Like, so if somebody's like wants to search for, I don't know, best jobs that I can just get hourly shifts and same day pay, right? And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden there's content that's talking about the top 10 types of
Sure.
jobs, and here are the top 10 types of employers in your area that's hyper localized. And
Yep. Yep.
that's where the agency needs to sit, right? And controlling that
Yep.
narrative and targeting, and you'd be surprised at like the conversion rates of, and even just like referrals. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
referrals convert 16 times higher than traditional
Yeah.
job ads, from job
Yeah.
boards. So, and this whole mix, like I don't talk to enough CMOs, and I feel like you do. Like,
Mhm.
are CMOs trying to, what do they need in order to like experiment on
Mhm.
this, right? Like, do they have like their budgets are getting cut? I talked to one the other day that's like, yeah, it's
Yep.
actually, we're only spending 0.5% of revenue now on on digital marketing, of which the majority of it goes to job board. And I think the average is like anywhere from 0.5 to like 2% of your revenue should go to some sort
Yep.
of marketing budget. Like, do they just not have the teams? Is there just not the type of talent yet available? I mean, are there agencies that are thinking like a direct to consumer e-commerce shop that wants to go, hunt
Yeah.
down qualified talent?
Yeah. I think to the first part of the question on the CMO side, or just like head of marketing side, I feel, people that we've talked to on the agency world, they have, budgets have been cut and teams have been cut. Unfortunately, like that's just the nature of it. I mean, marketing's always been. I feel like you always have like, you know, your neck on the chopping block, even on the B2B SaaS world. I do feel like it's a mind shift for an agency that's like historically done this one thing, which is our marketing has basically been pushing jobs to various boards. We might do some internal database marketing now, but it's kind of been these traditional paths. And I think the mind the mind shift of we need to test. Here's all the avenues we should test. Here's all the things we just need to do because they're table stakes in other industries. So for me, that's going way back. It's what's your kind of ideal customer and candidate profiles? Like, what are these ICPs that you have? Because that helps guide everything downstream from that. So if you're travel nursing, you kind of get that persona, you get that space really well,
Right.
and you build really great. You can build really great content around it. You know where to post your jobs because they're location specific. I think that's the type of play that I want to see more people do. I don't think it's a talent problem. I think it's just like a resource problem. I don't think
Yeah.
the talent's there, but the resources for these marketers in these orgs, they either again they've been cut or like the budget's not there, or the constraints are so much that they can't like shave off 2% to go test or 10% of that to
Right.
go test. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to a SaaS company, like our marketing budget would be 10% of revenue, if not
Right.
more, if we're in growth
Sure.
mode. So 2% is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering there's plenty of 100 million, $200 million staffing firms out there, and they could spend a little bit more on marketing and spend it differently than they do now versus 97% to one single source. Let's take 30% let's take 70% that we used to spend, and let's try these other channels. Those channels could be, paid ads. I'm a big proponent of like kind of build your own universe with search and SEO. Make sure
Yeah.
that house is in order. Make sure your website's in order. Make sure you're not throwing any roadblocks and making it easy to digest for your candidates and potential clients when they come to your site. Like I go to websites, I'm like, Jesus, I don't know what you do. Like, because it's all obfuscated. Like, tell me you place people in companies, or like that's the problem we're trying to solve for folks, and we don't just go out and blatantly say it. So
Right.
I think there's some changes happening. I think there's a lot that's being pulled from software companies and also from kind of e-com
Other,
companies.
yeah, more
Yeah,
mature industries. I've definitely seen an influx of
yeah,
leaders from retail and e-commerce coming in, which is good. That's where I came from. So like
yep,
history repeats itself, and there's definitely there's
yeah,
that paradigm shift that's happening in in staffing. And historically, if you look at any industry, if you look at the travel industry, you look at retail, e-commerce, any industry that goes through digital transformation, there's
hmm,
usually a cutting of middlemen, right? The middlemen
yep,
being of like, in this case, I'd like to think it's the marketing spend mix of how much
hmm,
going towards job boards. You can go direct to consumer more, right? You cut out the
sure,
middlemen, you cut out retailers, you go from brick and mortar to online. And in travel, it was removal of the actual travel agencies and the travel
yeah,
agents who owned, they
yeah,
had a
yeah, yeah,
monopoly in the ability to book travel. And that
hmm,
goes away with with transformation. And one thing I did want to talk about is like a lot of this, it gets good the more data you can get
Hmm.
on candidates and profiling them, right?
Hmm.
And like where you
Hmm.
come from marketing automation, like
Yep.
personalization
Yep.
is everything. We spend a
For sure.
lot of time scoring and grading jobs, right? This is an
Yep.
A job versus a B job. We're not doing that on talent and profiling them yet and
Totally.
creating personas where
Yep.
you
Yep.
now know the type of content you can feed them, whether they're active versus passive, whether they fit this type of prototype versus another. And then, of course, all of your content and advertising follows suit, all in an
For
effort to
sure.
drive that click a week from now, to drive a higher conversion rate. And you haven't
Totally.
seen anybody do that yet, have you? Like actually do persona-based marketing
On the candidate
towards
side,
candidates? Yeah.
it's rare, and again, I think it comes down to like the nature of the firm. Again, travel nursing, just to pull them out, I think they generally have a pretty good idea who their audience is. We've got a couple of travel customers that uh, they're super like lockstep with the candidates they're trying to place, and I think that to me is like, oh yeah, they know exactly, like they talk the talk, they walk the walk, they speak that asphalt language. Like they're at the
Yeah.
asphalt level. They're not up here talking about nursing and this and that and certification. They're like, yeah, like you want to do this, you want to go live here, you're going to get this per day. Like here's the cool stuff you get to go see when you move to San Francisco for six
Yep.
months. It's like awesome, great. All the other things are just assumed that they have them because they have these giant databases that they've curated over 20 years that they kind of know. They've
Hmm.
had really good relationships with them. So
Yeah.
I think
Have
in
you ever
other
been to
spaces,
Have you
what's
ever been to TravCon in Vegas? That
I've heard it's
it
crazy. No, I was just
well,
talking to
it's
somebody 2 days ago about this.
yeah, it's made. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like it's
No,
amazing because all of the agencies understand their brand and they create a very specific identity and they try to align that with the type of travel nurse they're looking to
yeah,
attract and retain.
yep,
And so, like, you
yep,
go there, and all of the agencies have their booths, and they create these booth experiences,
beautiful.
and they're all different, right? They're all completely different, and then it's just a ton of travel nurses that come in, and you can see how they almost
Yeah,
flock to what best defines them as a
for
person and
sure.
what fits their lifestyle. So it's hard to
Yeah,
take that and push it into the other verticals though, right? Like what's IT staffing? Like how would that
yeah,
look?
sure.
Like
We're building a
it.
bench. We don't care. There's 300,000 of you guys out there, whatever.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, I think there's companies that have done good jobs though, like in other spaces. I mean, we'll jump out of travel nursing for a second. But I do think, I mean, I'll give him a shout out. My buddy Tim Glennie in Denver. He's kind of built this over the past couple of years. Like started to focus more on his brand a little bit, like what's our brand and how do we relay that to the types of roles that we place. It's they have like 6 to 10 roles that they always place, and so they've put those candidates in pretty clean persona buckets, and now that when they're
Nice.
ready, like they've cut their jobs, they don't spend any money on job boards anymore. And so it's very much database marketing. They've, again, 20 something years, they've curated and like a really great database, and so seeing that, like, it's persona based, and then when they need to go like fill the top of the funnel, they do some external advertising and fill it in alternative ways. So it's kind of cool to see that. And I'm, again, we're just kind of, we always have our fingers, like we're on like this new edge of where people are, and kind of have our hands in the sky, like reading the raindrops. But um I think it's starting to go that way. I think to your point earlier about like I think that's about speed. I think it's about speed and
Right.
quality coming through. I
And
think
convenience for sure.
yeah, they're high volume, low margin typically. So they don't, like, a recruiter doesn't want to spend their time like categorizing and sorting people. It's like, can you lift 50 pounds? Can you work in the United States? Are you available to work second shift? Yes, cool. Like let's either like let's submit you right away, or let's do like one little quick verification step and move on. Like we can't spend a lot of time there because, again, the margins are super
Right.
low.
Sure.
Alternatively, you have other people that have higher margin business and slower volume. They can spend a little bit more time, and like they can start to understand those personas a little bit different. So I think it's probably just a dynamics of the type of firm that you might have, um, kind of either speed up or slow down technology and like the mind shift that exists when candidates are coming in. But to that last point on the LI side, I think we've talked to a customer that they want their goal in like the next 2 years is to cut job spend altogether. They're pretty big. They've got like 9 million candidates, and they're doing a huge database marketing effort right now to like figure out how they get, how can we segment all of the people in our database and get relevant jobs in front of them. And I think part of that is we have to categorize the job, which is like, to your point, we've done that for a really long time. We haven't done much on the candidate side though. So we don't take into account, have they been placed with us before? Have they not? Where do they live? All of these factors that we typically have in a profile become they're a little bit difficult to kind of like access. And, it's something we think about when we're trying to make these matches, more efficient. To your point of AI earlier, AI has made that extraordinarily, has fast tracked that a ton. Again, we use it as a framework to do some of these matching and categorization where historically that was pretty intense, big lift trying to do all that jazz and segmenting a database of 9 million candidates, right? Now you can do that with pretty high efficiency using some of the tools. So
nice. I just had a question come in, actually. I think it's pretty timely, right? Because we're talking about, the industry in general uses the job board. They don't think about it as the spend. They think about it as that's how we get our jobs out there, right?
Yeah,
and so like we're talking about out there. So if we want to move away from getting our jobs out there via the traditional spend, provide us some specifics on what you would recommend.
Yeah, targeted is always my first pass. So if you have a specialty, like there's job boards that are specialized, like definitely go pursue those. Don't do the generalist job boards. I think those are you're going to get overlap that you don't want. Whereas you have specialized job boards, use those. As far as getting it out there more, again, there's a ton of off the shelf stuff. There's Bullhorn Partners. There's other things that you can do to have the job live on your site. It's just kind of my recommendation. And then make sure they have a Google for Jobs integration or Google Jobs integration. It's a different API. You index it right away. Your job is found on organic search, and I think that's a good place to start. Alternatively, that's kind of the organic checklist, and then you have the paid checklist. So if you want to pay, you can do very geo-targeted job ads on Google. You can do those on display to kind of a right audience. Self-serving, that's what Boostie's first product Promote is all about. And then aside from that, again, it's building your channels. Like referrals is a great one. Again, Andre, I can't remember the SAA stat, but it's like 81% of staffing firms have a referral program, largely not automated, probably goes to a spreadsheet, all that jazz. So it's like, build that out a little bit, like play with that, because those are really great sources. If you have somebody you've placed, like why not ask them for other people that they know? Again, birds of a feather flock together. Like they might be a great source for you. And I think when you look at referral placements, they're up there. So again, we think about this mix, it's like, yeah, there's part of that mix is still going to be kind of what we call traditional, and that's it kind of falls in job boards, but there's other spectrum in this other universe that kind of go exploit. I think that can be overwhelming, but I just, piece it up and part it out and do one thing at a time. Like, again, I always like to start with who are we trying to sell to, sell the jobs to on the candidate side, and our products to our services to on the client side. And then make sure your website's in order. There's no blockers. It's not junk. Like Google can index it. People can navigate it and not get confused. And then you can start to think about the promotion side of things and make sure that you're driving kind of the relevant traffic to a really nice location. I mean, again, this is a playbook I've used on the B2B SaaS side for nearly 20 years. We've done it. We did it at Sendouts. We've done it at Herefish. We've done it at Help Bullhorn do it. We've done it at Boosty now. So it works. It just takes time. And it takes a mind shift of, we got to get off this single source model and start to diversify our marketing channels. So,
yeah, I'm glad you brought up referrals again, because there's a strategy that every agency needs to account for there. And it's not just referrals. It's more about reputation management and soliciting positive ratings and reviews.
Totally.
you have to consider your brand as its own, like, what are people saying about it, and what is that
Mhm.
star rating? Because in the younger demographics, when they go to do those searches on Google, the first thing they're going to look at is what are
Totally.
other people saying about you and what is your star rating? And you can
Yep.
pump those up with the right loyalty programs and reputation management solutions that go hand in hand with referrals. I think that is
Totally.
a solution that, like, you can throw as much ad spend to remarketing or direct, but it's going to be irrelevant once somebody piques interest. The first thing they're going to do before they go to apply and make that next
Mhm.
click is to check out whether you're real and what do people think about
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
that's a huge one. It's almost like an insurance policy on your
Yeah.
marketing budget, on your ad spend. You have to be driving, and the e-commerce industry was grown from this, right? I mean,
Totally.
there's tons of like Trustpilot and reseller ratings, these programs that are designed to
Yeah.
get people saying positive things about you. And so and I know there's other solutions out there that are doing it for like recruiters, but I care
Mhm.
about brand, right? I care about the
Yeah, yeah,
brand
yeah.
specifically, not your clients, but
Sure.
your brand.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've seen, I mean, the success or failure of conversion of these ads depends probably a lot on
Oh,
what
yeah.
that was being said about that brand.
Totally. I mean, I think there's again, like again, top of the funnel is your brand awareness, your employer brand, your talent marketing brand, whatever you want to call it, is way up there. That matters, but it's also like that's kind of how you got to like expose who you are a little bit to have a very solid, clear path of like why our company is different than the competing company down the street. Um, I think that's it's starting to get there. I think there's tools that kind of help facilitate that on the staffing side. Um, I look at star ratings again. The e-commerce poll is perfect here. Like if you go to Amazon and there's a 3-star rating and a 5-star rating, you're going to probably look at the 5-star rating first. And same with any name any product that you buy online. You look at the star
Yeah.
ratings and kind of dig into them. At least I do. I mean, I think it's important to help from a decision making standpoint when you haven't tried on the shoes or you haven't tried on the pants. Like, okay, what are other people saying about it?
Yeah.
And with on the agency side, there's definitely tools. I mean, there's great recruiters, there's staffing referrals. Both of those kind of can facilitate that. And I think both Bullhorn Marketplace partners too, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think you look at that, and it's like, yeah, you gotta build this trust that's gonna happen outside of your control. Somebody, if a recruiter sends an email to a person, they're like, "Who the hell is this?" I'm gonna go search for this person, and if they're not found or LinkedIn or whatever else, like what's your alternative? Like you look at the company and the company's got 2 stars and negative reviews. It's probably not going to be that great. So I think, like to your point, I think it's leveling up everybody. Like the crappy agencies that treated people like crap aren't going to be around longer if they're around at all right now. So I think that's again another um, parallel to ecom. I think we're seeing some positive moves that direction where people can't be just treated as a commodity anymore. It's like we actually care about the candidates, we care about our clients, we care about the jobs that we have out there. Um, so yeah,
Good.
it's good to see.
I had another question come through about integrations between the job boards and ATS systems. Like
Mhm.
I've heard that's been painful and there's been points of
Mhm.
contention throughout the
Sure.
years around it. It's not really my foray, but um, is it as efficient or proficient as it can be? I mean, is there, I guess the answer is probably no. The question is like, what can be done about that?
Yeah.
Is
I
probably
think
what we're looking for.
again, yeah, anecdotally talking to our prospects and current customers, I think the frustration lives with them on a job's open, say a job goes from the ATS to the job board. They fill it internally or it gets filled within 7 days, but the slot's open for 30. And so they have this 23-day gap where they're getting applicants that they don't want, that they're paying for, that they just don't need. And I think that's pretty inefficient. I think when you look at like conversion rate optimization or just optimization in general, you should definitely be doing something to optimize your job listings. Like again, if you're going to spend on a job board, make sure you're like doing it the most efficient way. I think some of that could live with the ATS integrations. So some of those integrations are old. Just having been in the ATS seat, it's pretty difficult sometimes working with some job boards. They change things. They don't tell you it breaks something internally, and there's like a lot of friction there. So I would kind of drill into that. Like if you have a niche job board, make sure that it's able to close when your job closes internally, and so you're not spending extra, or you're just not getting phantom applicants or applicants to a phantom job at that point because it's been filled. So I think that's, to me, like it's tough to diagnose like where the problem lives, if it's on the ATS end or on the job board end. But something that if you're going to leverage some boards, make sure you get a clear answer. If this closes, does the job shut off? In the story,
Yeah.
full stop in the story. Like, we don't need to have it out there.
One more topic, and then we'll open it up to see if there's any more questions. So,
Cool.
metrics around this analytics. So, candidate acquisition cost is probably the one that we want to focus on here. How efficient do you feel agencies are in tracking the various channels that are leading to candidates, and how those channels convert compared to others, right? Versus the cost to acquire a candidate and spending job board versus referral program, right? Or just
Mhm.
traditional like owned media.
Yeah.
Um, so where are your thoughts on that? What have you seen, and where are we in terms of our adoption of
Mhm.
driving better top of funnel metrics?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of kind of bullhorn ATS instances. Like, there's definitely like a source tracking is kind of baked in, so that's usually okay. It's okay. So it's usually at the placement level. There's very little line of sight to job performance, and I think that's, to me, where as a marketer, like, okay, like we have all these jobs out there on our website. Like, we have jobs we're posting. Like, we have kind of no line of sight on the views, on the applies, on the apply rates, on anything that like actually like leads to down funnel performance. And so you say you have like 10 at the bottom of the funnel, but you don't know how you got to that 10. I want to know how you got to that 10. And then how can we tweak something up top that makes this 15 all of a sudden? And I think that's really where um, I don't see a lot of people doing that. I think that, again, there's a gap that exists from not just Bullhorn, but most ATSs that we integrate with. There's like a job record in the ATS, and then there's this activity that happens on the website, and like those things don't talk, and it's very, very crunchy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we look at that as like, okay, how do we, again, you have a funnel on your B2B SaaS website, like, traffic came from this source, it did this, it did that, and then it turned into a conversion.
Yeah.
So
So the challenge in e-commerce was attribution, right? Because you have all these digital strategies and they're all competing. And at some point,
mhm.
talent are
Mhm.
omnipresent. And so they
Mhm.
might have come in through a referral and then 3 months later respond to an
Sure.
automation. And so like how are we doing a good job of like tracking where lead sources are coming from? Is it just constantly passing the baton, and are the
Yeah.
right sources getting because I know a lot of this happens at a placement level, but like does
Yep.
that lead source change? And is there any sort of attribution happening?
Yeah, I think the attribution is probably lacking. I mean, I think last touch attribution is one I use the most, just because it's like, okay, we've done all this stuff, but we have a history of that in the record, right? So like, we know the first thing we did was send an email, or they came in from a Google ad. And then the last thing they did was download a white paper and then filled out a demo form. So it's like, okay, like there's some art there that you have to apply. There's definitely a science you could apply. So a lot of people will just do last touch attribution, call it a day. But I think to know the history of, we've done all this activity outside of the last thing that made this person hit the big red button, right? And then you look at
Right.
ecom, that's the model. We've done all these ads. We've done thousands of impressions to this one person. They signed up for, we caught them on an exit intent when they were trying to leave our site, and got them to sign up 10% off in an email promotion. And then we got them back with a sale for a product we know they looked at 3 months ago. And I think, that's complex when you try to apply that to an industry that doesn't have that mentality. But for ecom, that's table stakes. And so we are, again, our view and our worldview and where we are attacking with products and upcoming is we want to create this universe that's like, you have this marketing engine at your disposal that you can do all these things that start at the top of the funnel, that work people through, that we churn out the people that become applicants and qualified applicants, and we move them on to your kind of processes. And then again, Bullhorn's a good example of you move them into a process that's powered by AI and automation. Then you have your touches and the work, the manual work that recruiters had to do is kind of reduced, and they actually get to focus on, let's talk to this person, let's have a conversation, because they've passed all these checks that they're the right qualified candidate for me to actually have a conversation with, versus spinning the wheels up front with a bunch of stuff that's just not relevant. And again, long-winded way to say I think we're getting more efficient, but it's going to take some time.
Good. Great. We had one last question that came in, and then we'll call it a day. Question was about the best way to remove friction for the candidate during the submittal process to jobs on our site. So I'm guessing that's the application process they're talking about, and the goal is to get higher conversion. So this is one, I mean, I'll take the first stab at this. You need to reduce any barriers to drop off, and that usually comes down to UX analysis and design, right? I mean, it is the same thing that e-commerce companies have been doing for decades, figuring out ways to reduce the amount of clicks and keystrokes to get candidates to the next step in the process, or in this case, consumers to purchase a product, right? So, and that needs to, like, a UX design. Like, traditionally what happened was you had these paper processes, and then we digitized them, and we said, okay, now we're doing online jobs and online applications. The process was just absolutely brutal, right? And think about online shopping carts today, and how, like, they all look the same at this point, and they've all been designed after Amazon's one click, and is to reduce the amount of buyer hesitation, right? So, like, talent hesitation, and that's what happens. Am I really right for this job? Do I really want to fill out 37 questions in a pre-screening? And, like, agencies will say, like, well, this is our process. Like, well, your conversion rate is 2%, or less than that. So I would have, somebody says use Matador Jobs. Paul Byrne, who I'm assuming is a user of Matador Jobs, or maybe works for Matador Jobs.
I think he's the owner of Matador Jobs.
There we go. But the idea is, like, you're going to have better vendors, and you need to either get access, whether it's through the vendors or through your own creative people, get people that understand conversion optimization and user experience, and design a funnel experience from that initial apply, or even from the pages that candidates land on, whether it's through paid or organic, that is going to lead them through a digital experience that is going to drive the highest conversion. And this is what I do day in and day out at Bullhorn, is I do analysis of all these sites and give my feedback as to what they should be doing differently, and what the potential impact is, because it's huge. Because when you're dealing with tens of thousands of jobs and hundreds and thousands of candidates, you have the e-commerce problem. You have a massive funnel, and conversion. Just get your conversion from 2% to 2.5% to 3%. You're going to see massive return because of how big the numbers are.
No question. Yeah, I mean, that's again, back to, like, agency days of mine, like, when I would work with other software companies and help them kind of assess this exact thing that you work on, there's like three components to an ad campaign. We'll just break it down to ad campaigns. This exists on websites too, but so you have your creative, so your ad that's out there in the world, and it's targeting the right people, right? And then you have a landing page experience. So my landing page is clear. It's directly related to the creative that I had. I know what I'm in for when I hit that landing page. And then I hit a conversion process. So the conversion process is super clean. Like, I don't have to fill out a bunch of BS and to even just you get a hand wave from a sales rep. So now apply that to the job experience. Recruiting hell is one of my favorite Reddits subreddits. I clicked on the job board link, and that sent me to the ATS link. Then I clicked on the apply link. Then I filled out 34 questions, and then I had to do it again for the next job on the exact same website that I just did. And that's BS. Like, that sucks. I think with Boosty, we're trying to we're trying to give all of those tools with like a very elegant way. Like, you click a button, you boost a job, we create ads for you, we create a landing page, and we have a very simple apply process. Our apply product we're pulling out soon, and that's going to kind of, to your point of like UX, like, think of all the places you buy now. Mine is Shop.pay. Like, I look for it. Like, I want to pay with a click. I don't want to have to do all this BS again. I don't want to enter my address. I don't want to enter my credit card every time. And so I think, again, putting that cap on and thinking about your candidates, there's no different. Again, your product is your job page. That's the product that candidate's looking at. We want to convert more people. So I think there's some stat of like, 30% of the people that look at a job actually are the ones that apply. Like, that's crazy. So you've lost 70% because, for whatever reason, like, it might not have been a good fit, but a lot of the times, like, the information's not there. We know the biggest drivers for conversion are like salary and location information. So, like, why don't we show that? Why don't we bubble that up? And I think, and we think about integrating with an ATS, we pull that out. We want to find like, okay, what's that salary look like for this role? There's just stuff you need to do. Like, again, I say table stakes, but that's kind of what table stakes is going to be here in the next 6 months to a year.
100%. The way I would even look at it, that's 70%. If we know that 70% of us are passive candidates, what percentage of that 70 that drop off are passive? If your application process requires a resume, I don't have a resume up and ready and, brushed up and ready to go. So, like, eliminate that, remove the need to apply and upload a resume, and you're going to see conversion increase. Start with a conversation, and all of a sudden that person's, could potentially be a great fit. So I love it. These are the kind of things that agencies need to be thinking about as we approach the next chapter in our digital transformation here with the top of the funnel. And we got to learn a little bit about Boosty. Travis, thank you so much. This was really great. Really appreciate it.
Love it, man. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
You bet. Thanks, everyone.